All the characters in the story are over 18 years old. A website called Forbidden Confessions is hidden in the nooks and crannies of the dark web. People come to this site to talk about their past meetings with members of their family, to confess their sins, or to show off, to have an audience in front of whom you could share your dirty secret, to get to a place where, instead of being vilified and condemned for their actions, they receive encouraging comments from people who see nothing wrong with what they have done. In fact, it's a mix of both. People who feel bad about what they have done publish posts in search of recognition made to the faceless masses in order to relieve themselves of the burden of long-suppressed guilt. For others, this confession sounds different. Perhaps their story is a funny, if forbidden, memory, or even something they enjoy to this day. But who could they tell their story to without being demonized for breaking the rules of society? Thus, forbidden confessions are a mixture of sinful, but at the same time pleasant and loving encounters, as well as truly shameful acts that the perpetrator deeply regrets. This site is not for those who are worried about any stories, but for those who have either experienced it or want to experience it. Use these stories to live vicariously through others, to take pleasure in what we know is wrong, and to receive a kind of comfort in knowing that they are not alone in their pursuit of the forbidden fruit. Even in this group, there are those who are here for various reasons. Those who smile at the fun games between brothers and sisters, stories about forbidden love and the desire of parents and their adult children. But there are also those whose desires are a little darker, who like stories about blackmail or taking advantage of themselves. Regardless of your motives and reasons, whether you came to confess or enjoyed confession, or even if you came here out of unhealthy curiosity, you are here. Now do what you came for. For everyone reading this, my name is Royce. I am 73 years old, and I have visited this site many times since I discovered it 2 years ago. I have been intrigued by many of the stories given here, but have never felt the need to share my own. This continued until today, when the golden anniversary of the event that changed my life forever is celebrated. I hope that for everyone who is or has ever been in a similar situation, this will revive pleasant memories of that magical time when you first experienced the pleasure of realizing that what most people think is wrong can turn out to be so unequivocally right. It was the summer of 1968, and for me and my twin sister Rose, it was really miserable, which made it look like all the previous ones. Our father was a priest, with fire and brimstone. Everyone will burn in hell for any sin, unless you spend 24 hours a day kneeling and repenting. Because our parents believed that most of what the world offered was sin, our mother taught us at home, while our father devoted his time to the church. The congregation was small, and the tithes he received were barely enough to keep the church afloat and support his family. Mom helped by giving piano lessons and tutoring the neighborhood kids. We didn't have much money, but we had a roof over our heads, food on the table, and decent clothes. It's not that we needed a lot of people, because we rarely went outside. Rose and I were the epitome of closeness, and today it would seem unhealthy even in the modern Pentecostal church, but then it was not so uncommon. Every year for as long as I can remember, my father handed over the management of the church to an assistant pastor so that he could teach and preach at the 6-week Renaissance summer camp in the south of the country. The event was sponsored by the Ministry of Internal Affairs and was not only well paid, but my sister and I were able to visit the camp for free. I know, it's great, isn't it? Which boy or girl would prefer to spend the summer with children our age and have fun instead of the opportunity to get additional religious education? I know you think it was still a camp where there should have been at least some entertainment. I suppose it was, but it was between morning prayer, early Bible study in the afternoon, and, of course, evening service. Yes, there were kids our age, but raised the same way as us, one step above the Amish, so it seemed like we were just talking to our own reflections. Or maybe not, because we're both tired of this lifestyle. Maybe some of the other kids did too, but they were afraid to say so. This summer was even worse than the previous ones due to the fact that at the age of 18 we began to participate in prayers and Bible study for adults, and were no longer allowed to attend many activities for younger children. It goes without saying that when we helped our parents pack our bags and suitcases into an old van, we were less enthusiastic than ever. Now that I've sorted out some of the mundane details, let me turn the conversation to what you came here for. As you can imagine, the topic of making love was forbidden. Except that each of us, me from my father, and Rose from our mother was told that love can only be made after we get married, and nothing was discussed. No details, no birds and bee stories about how this happens, and not even a word about how we are safe if we make love, because it was incomprehensible to our parents that any of us were interested in the sins of the flesh. Not that it had to be that way on their part. I asked my father about this several times, and he replied that as soon as I meet a good God-fearing young lady, fall in love, and get married for all the right reasons, I can spend the rest of my life. Nothing was known about it outside our house either. We didn't go to school to communicate with these terrible, worldly children who knew about it. The children we talked to at church were just as ignorant as we were, and the same applied to the crowd at the camp. I know it's hard for young people to believe this, but keep in mind that there was no internet back then. There weren't even videotapes back then, and unless you were old enough to go to adult cinemas, you had limited access to any movies. But over the past few months, I found myself thinking about it more and more often. No amount of isolation from the world can stop raging hormones and a completely natural curiosity about the opposite sex. For some time I woke up and remembered that I had dreams about random girls whom I knew from church or from the camp. Even the fact that I had practically no idea what a woman should look like didn't stop my mind from trying. If you're a man reading this, you know how frustrating it is to be helpless to get any relief. But imagine my situation when I didn't even have a chance to get that relief. Yes, and just think that some children today think that their parents are strict. We are twins, and like all twins, we were exceptionally close, and in our case, even more so due to the lack of a social life. We were the typical couple you read about in forbidden stories. Brother and sister, playmates, friends, accomplices in crime, confidants, and, in general, everything for each other. We dressed as decently around the house as if we were going outside. I always had to wear jeans or sweatpants, but never shorts, because even though we were brother and sister, we still weren't supposed to show each other inappropriate body parts. But I was kind of fascinated by my sister precisely because of her amazing facial features. Despite the fact that women in the church were not allowed to use cosmetics or jewelry other than wedding ones, Rose's natural beauty was undeniable. Her red hair was brighter than mine. Fortunately, mine was more reddish-brown, since a man's bright red hair is not nearly as attractive as a woman's fiery red, which attracted the attention of people across the room. Like most parishioners and young ladies, she wore them either in a bun or braided. Her long, naturally curly locks looked like liquid flames, and her stunning pale blue eyes were an incredible contrast of fire and ice. Pale like any girl with pure Irish roots, she was dotted with freckles on her cheeks and nose area, which made her model beauty even more attractive. It was Rose, a sensible young lady leading a righteous Christian life. But I always had the feeling that my sister was much freer in spirit than most of the children in our church, including myself. One of our many rules was that by 9 in the evening, after an hour of watching TV, which we were allowed to watch with our parents, and only good useful family content, we had to go to our rooms and stay there overnight, except when we needed to go to the toilet, and even then, we were asked to go out before we went to bed. But Rose was caught sneaking out of the house twice, and once during last year's camp. The story she told my parents was the same as mine. She just walked around and enjoyed the night air and the sense of freedom that she thought we were deprived of, constantly being at home, in church, or surrounded by the same people. In response, our parents locked her in a room at night for a whole month, which I think would have led to a call to the authorities in our time, because she was told that if she needed to go to the toilet, she must either endure or be ready to wash everything that she had soiled. Rose also slipped away from group activities at the camp from time to time, but always showed up in time for roll call before heading back to the cafeteria, church, or group of cabins where everyone was staying. And again, she told me that all she did was walk by herself and try to see everything with her own eyes, without waiting for someone to tell her how to look at it. This was the last example of how she did it, which brings us to the part of the story you've been waiting for. It was on a Friday evening, for the biggest service of the week, which was attended by people from neighboring churches. During the week, our father spoke at all the services and led them, but allowed other pastors to preach, but Friday always belonged to him. Because of this, the service began much later than usual, at 9:30, and reached 11 if someone tried to pray to the end. I usually didn't see Rose from morning prayers until dinner, because in youth groups, boys and girls were separated from each other all day. However, That day, she shocked me by catching up with me around 12 o'clock as I was walking to the boys' cafeteria. She withstood several shocked stares from the other boys, grabbed my hand, and told me to stand so she could talk to me. I shouted, "She's my sister," to one of the counselors, who looked at us strangely, although our resemblance was so close that it was obvious. He waved at me and added, "Don't stay too long," and then stayed with the main group as they continued walking. Rose looked strange. Her cheeks were the same color as her name, and her eyes were wide and bright, and even though the day wasn't that warm and we were in the shade, she was sweating. I asked what was wrong, and in a hoarse voice she told me that she would return to the hut and tell our mother that she was not feeling well. I started to ask her what happened, but she interrupted me, saying that I needed to do the same. When I asked why, she replied that I should trust her and that she and I should give up attending the service in order to be alone. I must have looked as confused as I felt because she laughed, and I could hear the nervousness in her laugh. But she told me she wanted to show me something, and please, I just need to do as she asks. I have no idea what was going on, but the idea of skipping the service wasn't such a bad one, considering that during the 3 weeks we spent there, it was held every night. So I agreed. Feeling like a complete fool, and also guilty for lying to our parents, I nevertheless declared that I did not feel well as soon as I returned to the cottage. I told my mom that I was dizzy, I was sick, and even pretended to run to the bathroom and, making several convincing gagging sounds, declared that I just threw up. Rose described the same symptoms, but we crossed our fingers so that the parents wouldn't suspect anything. I think it paid off. No matter how tired we were of church, none of us ever asked for a date, because Mom told our dad that she didn't think we should go there. He scared us when he offered to go and let all the ministers lay their hands on us and pray. But Mom balked and said there was no reason to take any chances. That will get worse and maybe others will get sick. After all, it was just one night. Dad gave in, but forbade us to watch TV, and we had to go to bed early. Each of us went to our room to lie down, because, we were sick, and in the end I dozed off shortly before they left at 6:30. I was awakened by a soft knock on the door and, looking at the alarm clock to my right, saw that it was 5 minutes to 8. The knock was repeated, and I hesitantly called to enter. The door opened and my sister came into the room. "So, what's so special that we had to lie?" I stopped talking because I sat up, turned around on the bed, and got a good look at Rose. Her hair was loose, 2 long red curls framed her face perfectly, and, as always, I felt strangely excited to see her like this, because it made her look much more like a woman than a little girl. But that wasn't what left me speechless. My sister was wearing makeup. Her lips were painted red, as bright as her hair, and her ice blue eyes were highlighted with blue eyeshadow. Her eyelashes were longer and painted black, and her usually white cheeks turned pink. "What have you done to your face?" I managed to ask after a few seconds of stunned silence. "Do you like it?" She smiled, flashing her white teeth against her red lips. It took me a lot of effort not to look like a clown. You look like a woman. I mean, like a real woman who doesn't go to church. Or a harlot, as the Bible says," she giggled, and as before, her laugh was higher and a little shrill, as if she was forcing herself to do it or was just nervous about something. "Where did you get this? If Mom and Dad find this, you're in serious trouble. Then Mom must be in trouble because it's hers." Her answer stunned me, and I repeated it. "Does Mom have makeup?" Rose nodded, moving closer to the bed. "But you only see my face?" To be honest, I was only looking at her face, because my attention was immediately drawn to her hair, and then the shock of her painted face. But when I looked down, my jaw dropped. "What do you think about it?" "What is it?" she asked. "What does your little sister look like in the role of a big girl?" "You're my little sister for only 15 minutes, I said, not knowing what else to say. Rose rolled her eyes. "Come on, Royce, play with me." She smiled slyly. "Trust me, it's worth it." "What are we playing at?" I asked. "I'll tell you, but first you have to answer me. Do you like to see me look like a woman?" "Yes," I replied, almost in a whisper. "You look amazing." "Thank you," she giggled, technically ruining the game. She was a woman now, but at the same time, this sound seemed much more attractive than in the past. "You smell good. I like your perfume." "Pearls and lace," she replied, still hugging me. It's Mom's, and this dress is too. I know it's a little weird, but I don't have funny things like this. I didn't think that Mom had something like that. I thought wrong. Besides, the fact that I'm dressing up in it may be part of the game. Again? What kind of game is this? I stood with my hands awkwardly at my sides. Rose blinked at the touch and swallowed before answering. That's nice. I like it when you touch me. I liked it too. I knew it was wrong. I'm glad you're not mad. I like what I see. Maybe you can see more. What is it exactly? Something that made me want to do it. To look good, but to behave badly. She looked at me through lashes heavily made up with mascara. Do you want to be bad with me? What kind of bad one? You know, I like to wander around when I have the opportunity. I like watching people when they don't know I'm seeing them, and I like watching their behavior. It's pretty boring in the church or nearby, but not today. What happened today? I noticed that Mom and Dad were not in the dining room. Yesterday, I saw them leaving the training hall around 11. Today, I followed them. Where did they go? I tried my best to focus on her words. They came here. First, I looked inside, and Dad was sitting on the couch. I didn't see my mom, and after a few minutes I got bored, and then I heard her calling him from the hallway. I ran around the house. The blinds were not fully lowered, and I could look into their room. Mom was wearing makeup, and I saw the case on her dressing table. Wait! I blinked as her words broke through the fog of my confused feelings that she was so close. You mean you saw them? I saw them making love, Rose said in a hoarse whisper, which was trembling. I thought you and I could play their game. Her eyes, big and shiny, met mine. We can call it what Mom and Dad do. Show me what they were doing, I asked her. Please. Stop it. Did I do something wrong? No, but there are other ways to play. She gave me a smile that has never ceased to fascinate me for many years. Rose laughed and pushed me away. I collapsed next to her on the bed, and we lay in silence, catching our breath. Did you like the game? What is it? She asked. I could play it all the time. I laughed. Promise that you will only play with me. She turned around and wasn't smiling anymore. I'm serious, Royce. I want to be yours, and you want to be mine. Forever. Just us. I would like that. I'll do whatever you want. I'll be a good woman and a bad girl for you, Rose said. But you're going to be nice to me, okay? It's not a problem. You are the most beautiful girl I know. You don't know many people. She tried to keep a serious expression on her face and then giggled. But I'd be glad even if you knew. Make no mistake, I'll be the best guy you know. Do you believe it? I guess, she told me, and then burst out laughing. Royce, I'm so happy right now. Me too. But the enormity of what happened struck me. What about Mom and Dad? We won't tell them, silly. Rose rolled her eyes. But we're 18 now, and we're old enough to work, and when we leave, we'll find a job. Dad wants us to go to Bible college in a year. When he has enough money to, no, we will work and rent a place. I don't want to live like this anymore and meet you in secret. As soon as we can, we'll move in. Promise me. They will be unhappy. We've never been happy, Royce. Do you want to make them happy? Do you want me to make you happy forever? Only you, I exclaimed. That's a good answer. And we can play every night when we're alone. Whatever you want, Rose. Whatever you want. That evening was 50 years ago. I never thought about it then, but my sister knew more about making love than I did. After that, I just wanted to sleep, but Rose wanted to go to our parents' room and rummage there. In Mom's dresser, we found more cosmetics and some very fashionable things. Looking back, I realized that my mom used to make up for Dad, but it also made me see things in a bad light. That we and all young people like us were deprived of this pleasure. That in order to get it, we had to live a clean life. I wonder how many young people in this church got married without feeling much love for each other, but in order to finally be able to satisfy their long-standing needs, then they lived their whole lives together because divorce was another sin. But not us. No, our love, no matter how forbidden it was, grew and flourished and stood the test of time. 50 years have passed, and we are still together, and we love each other very much. We kept our promise to each other by telling our parents that we were not going to take a year off and then go to Bible college, where they wanted to introduce us to our future spouses. No, we were going to keep working and live our own lives. The first few months were not easy. We spent some time together when we could, and missed each other in our rooms when we couldn't. The constant debate is that we need to pray for different things. It wasn't like that. It was ours, and we stuck to it and moved into a small 3-room apartment. We bought a folding bed, which, as I claimed, I slept on. We lived as brother and sister to the whole world, and as a couple in love behind closed doors. We both left the church, and our parents disowned us. As frustrating as it worked in our situation. We were able to leave the state without feeling guilty, and once we were in a place where no one knew us, we began to live openly as a couple. Rose even dyed her hair black for a couple of years so that we wouldn't look so much alike. But as soon as we were able to distance ourselves from everyone even more, we didn't care, and no one around us ever seemed to notice anything strange about us. We never got officially married, but we bought rings and told people we were married. Our first child was born 5 years after that fateful night when we became lovers. Our gorgeous daughter Lynn, and 2 years later, our son Royce Jr. One day our mother turned to us. I still don't know how she found out where we live and wanted to come and see us. We discussed it, but decided not to do it. We couldn't hide the fact that we had 2 children, and they would be shocked by the fact that we were a couple living not just in sin, but in absolute sin. It was a difficult choice, but we had to make it, and in a sense they made it for us, forcing us to lead this harsh puritanical lifestyle. We often talk about whether they did not create our sin in their desire to protect us from the world. Is it possible that if we were raised normally, we would go to school, date others, and eventually settle down and marry others? But, as Rose is quick to point out, our father always claimed 2 things. Firstly, did God have a plan? And secondly, no one was supposed to understand it, or even like it. So maybe it was God's plan for us. Not that I know for sure, because we haven't talked for a long time. But despite what brought my sister and me together, half a century later we have children, grandchildren, and we love each other very much. And we still do what mom and dad do. End.